Ma'am, now you may share your screen, ma'am.
Okay. Are the participants already inside?
Yes, ma'am. Some of them have joined already.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, all of you.
Yeah, now your screen is visible, ma'am.
Yes. Now I'll stop sharing. I'll see if I can toggle between the screens. Just one moment.
Okay, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Is it visible, ma'am?
Are you able to see the Folger Shakespeare?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Then what about video, ma'am? Video, ma'am?
I think that should not be a problem. That is
Shall
a
we
part
check
of
one
the website.
video, ma'am? You told no, ma'am. I mean, whether
No,
the
no.
audio
That's not necessary.
problem.
That's
Okay,
part
ma'am.
of this
Okay, okay.
website only. If I can toggle between the screens, I just
Okay,
want.
ma'am. Then we shall start by 11 o'clock, ma'am.
Yes, please. I'll wait until then.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
A pleasant morning to the respected dignitaries and members of faculty from various institutions who have gathered here. The Department of English, BET Institute of Arts and Science welcomes you for the third session of 6-day Virtual International Faculty Development Program on emerging trends and challenges in teaching language and literature. Now I invite Ms. V. Gayatri, Assistant Professor of English, to introduce the chief speaker of today's session.
A multi-talented person is the one who is master of many disciplines. Our resource person bears testimony to this statement. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming Dr. Madangi V, Assistant Professor of English, PSGR Krishnamal College for Women, Coimbatore. Her illustrious academic profile includes UGC NET, JRF in English, and she is also a gold medalist in her bachelor's and master's degree in English. She completed her doctorate in the field of comparative literature. She started her career as a radio jockey in Suryan FM, Coimbatore, and began her academic service as an assistant professor in NGP College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. Besides, she is a soft skill and communicative English trainer. Her excellence is not limited to the field of literature and teaching alone. She is a scriptwriter, subtitle writer, voiceover artist, translator, and freelancer translator for NGO. Being a part of Dr. Bennett's NET examination coaching team, she helps students, research scholars, and faculty members in clearing UGC NET examination. Dr. Madangi has presented and published papers in various reputed national and international journals. She has served as a resource person in many events. In addition, she is the member of Board of Studies at PKR Arts College for Women, Govichettipalli. Ma'am, we request you to enlighten the participants through your session on digital humanities. Please, ma'am.
Good morning, all of you. It is really a pleasure to meet all of you through this platform, and my heartfelt thanks to VET College of Arts and Science for having invited me over. So, as you know already, today we will be discussing about digital humanities. Fine, we have just 1 hour's time. So without much ado, we will go into the topic. Just bear with me while I present my screen. I hope it is visible to all of you. So yes, today we are going to discuss about digital humanities, right? So many of you must be familiar with this theme already. You must have read about it because it is an up and coming area. Fine, so I'll start to share my slide and we can discuss in detail about digital humanities in the course of the lecture. And also taking into account the time space, I have tried to deal whatever is possible within this time limit. Actually, it is a very vast area. And in the later part of my lecture, you will see that I am going to focus exclusively on digital literary studies. So, as I told you, whatever I can, we can deal in this short time. So yes, by way of introduction, I would like to tell you what digital humanities is. So digital humanities is basically applying computer-based technology to the field of humanities. Now, the term digital humanities itself is self-explanatory, and this should have already told you about this, that is applying computer-based technology to the field of humanities. Earlier, it was called human computing, and for the past 40 years or so, this field has been developing slowly and steadily. But initially, it was used only for very particular purposes. That is, see, there has been a quantum leap in science and technology in recent times, especially in the field of computers. We have interactive bots, we have artificial intelligence too. So this has changed the perspective. But the real question comes to most literarians. We start to question as to how or what is the basis of mingling humanities with computer science. How is it possible at all? In our case, how can literary studies and computer science be commingled? How is it complementary? Because most of the time we don't see both these areas or disciplines to be reciprocal. Instead, we believe that they are at tangents. But in the course of the lecture, we will come to understand how we can apply computer studies and computational algorithms to understand literature better. So its initial use, as I told you, was in creating archives and databases. Say, for example, the very well-known Gutenberg.org, where you can simply type the name of the text that you want, and you can download, say, a plain text or a HTML text or a PDF copy of a book. Now, this was how computer science or computer applications was initially used in the field of humanities, that is to create archives or databases, but it did not pertain only to textbooks because we are now dealing with humanities in general. So it meant artworks and other materials too, belonging to disciplines of humanities like, say, arts, music, history, philosophy, etc. So, but the scope of the field currently, it is so immense. Fine. In fact, if you refer to textbooks talking about digital humanities, you will find how there are different definitions, and some of them have even abstained from giving a definition. Why? Because it is an ever-growing field, and it's not possible to give an all-encompassing definition. However, they have tried to give something like a working definition. Fine. So, are you able to witness the slide change?
Ma'am, no, ma'am. It is in the first slide itself, ma'am.
Pardon me, I will try to share the screen again.
Yeah, now it is visible, ma'am.
Okay, it is not changing for me. Just one moment. Is it visible now?
It is visible, ma'am. It is in slide.
Your voice is breaking.
Ma'am, your slide is visible, ma'am, but it is again in the first slide, ma'am.
Okay, what is happening?
Ma'am, without getting into slideshow, normally you can go to the next slide, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, I'm very sorry about this. I was actually dreading something like this would happen. Okay, now you
Yes,
can see
ma'am.
the first slide introduction.
Now the slide, yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes,
Now
ma'am.
you can
It is changing, ma'am. Now it is changing.
Thank God. So yes, so we saw that
Okay.
how digital humanities can have only a working definition, and that working definition will include digitization, analysis, and presentation of humanities content. So we saw earlier it was just creating archives, but over a period of time, this trend changed. Due to development in computer science and technology, we saw that using computers, we were able to digitize the content, we were able to analyze the content, and we were also able to present the content in a particular manner. Now I have certain other websites which I wanted to show you in order to explicate all this, but I'm very scared. Shall I try it? Is it okay? I'll just try doing it. If we cannot, I'll just proceed with these slides, but I think it will be relevant. Mohanasundari ma'am, you will have to tell me, let me know if you are able to view the slide.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I will tell you, ma'am.
Is it visible? Folger Shakespeare?
Yes, ma'am. Now it is visible, ma'am.
Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
this is one particular website. It is actually a part of a larger website. I can give you the details later if you want. So see, under this website, you have all Shakespeare's works compiled. But this is not out of the ordinary, is it not? We usually have other websites that do something like this. But if you explore this website, you will get to understand how you have more options about reading and analyzing the text. Say, for example, if you click read, it takes you to another screen, fine, where you can search for the works of Shakespeare. See, you have all these areas, names of text, which you can click and you can download. Everything is available for study, but there are exclusive areas of search. Say, for example, you can click particular terms. Like say, I'm just giving a random word. Do you see? Something like soul. So this website, it lists all the places where the word soul occurs. Not just that, you can click these links and you can actually go into the play. You can read that part of the play which contains the word that you are looking for. Fine. So this we can use for a number of purposes. If you want to quote, it has its own uses. And see, you will have to sit and analyze this website. Only then you will know to what all use you can put Folger Shakespeare to. Fine, I'm just giving you one random example. How digitization took place initially, it was just piling up one material after another. But in later times, you are able to analyze all these materials. Now let me show you another website. Is it visible? Jane Austen manuscript?
Yes, ma'am. It is visible, ma'am.
Yes. So if you see this particular website, I'll give you the details later. It contains close to 1,500 pages of Jane Austen's fictional manuscripts. Fine. It has all been digitized. You can see her actual writing. And on the left side, just in case you're not able to make out, you have the text typed out, including the corrections carried on. So these are the possibilities. So to view this and much more, you have to go into Southern Connecticut State University website. Now they have unique materials on digital humanities itself and its associations with literature. Apart from that, we also have literary digital projects, faculty student DH projects, etc. Now, if you see, I'm under this faculty student project, and if you see the very first one, Boston College, they have worked on what is called Walking Ulysses, where we are all very familiar with James Joyce's Ulysses, is it not? So this particular DH project, what does it do? See, it takes you through the streets of Dublin on June 16, 1904. If you have read the novel, you will know about the significance of this date. The walks are made alive with audio recordings, images, sketches, and passages. So all that you've got to do is just to click on this link it will open to the video section where you can watch this video. It's very much there. You just click on video walkthroughs and you can see the video. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear the video now because I'm presenting it through this platform, but you can otherwise try it out in your classroom. Fine. So it's a very wonderful video. It is so elaborate. It takes you through the street and you also have pop-ups whenever necessary, talking in detail about whatever events or places that have been depicted in the novel. Fine. So we will come to this later, but then just keep in mind about this particular website. Fine, where you can go and witness a lot of other projects. See, it's not projects just by Southern Connecticut University. You have South Carolina University projects. Everything has been listed one after the other. Nebraska, Lincoln University, you have the Walt Whitman archive, you have the Villa Carter archive. So you will have to explore these websites to know how you can put them to better use in your classrooms. Fine. So now I come back to the slide once more, hoping that it would play. Can you see the slides?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now?
Yes, ma'am.
So we saw how.
Now the slides are visible, ma'am. It is in introduction.
Okay. So we see how you can digitize the content, analyze the content, and also present the content. So once again, there are examples. Examples say like digital annotation of ancient texts. In fact, the next slide, it is about how such ancient texts have been digitized. Now just look at this picture. This is from Virgil's Aeneid. Fine. This is one of the earliest known manuscripts of Virgil's Aeneid. Now, the Vatican has digitized this text, and the entire text, it consists of several pages of manuscripts. It is visible on the website. See how clear it is. Even the fold in the paper is visible with all the scratches and the markings. So this is one possibility. And now look at this. This is from a website by name musicalgeography.org. Actually, this is an apology for the actual map that is available on the website. They have n number of maps, and this particular map, it is titled City of Lights. It is about the city of Paris, not now. It depicts Paris, how it looked from 1900 to 1950. As I told you, the map is much bigger, and all the icons and symbols that you see here, they are just pictures in this particular pic. But if you go to the original website, you will see that they are all icons. They represent a particular building. This, as I told you, this is from the Musical Geography website. So they talk about the different opera houses, the musical theaters that were functioning at that point of time in Paris. So it's like, actually, you can take a walk through the streets of Paris. You can just click on all these buildings, and you can also get to know about their historical importance. So all these are projects of digital humanities. Fine. So you can digitally map areas of cultural and historical significance, something that I told you now. And apart from this, it is also used in data visualization in politics. Now, what is this in politics? Elections, say, for example, they conduct polls, is it not? Before the actual poll, and the results, it can be picturized in the form of data visualization. So it will be easier for those who are viewing those statistics to understand what is actually happening. So with recent advances in digital imaging, it is highly possible to create very good quality reproduction of books. I need not tell you. We saw some examples just now, is it not? Jane Austen's manuscript, and of course, Virgil's Aeneid. Fine. But then there is one burning question. In spite of all this, we might tend to ask, Is digital technology invading academics? See, I will not be able to influence you in any way through my lecture. I can only give you a series of facts and findings connected to this area. Ultimately, it is left to you. But then we will all have to concede to one idea, that is, digitization of textbooks has made things much easier for us. We are able to carry out research with so much ease. A decade or two earlier, if you ask people who have been doing their research, then it was so hard even to get a primary source. And when it comes to secondary source, they must have gone around all over the place, visiting one library after the other. They will sit and meticulously write down notes from the library books. And it was a very tedious process. And even when it came to typing and formatting, they only had typewriters. So even then it was not easy. Just imagine how things have changed now. You can sit in the convenience of your own homes, and with just a click of a mouse away, you are able to download so many books, secondary materials. Of course, some of these materials are behind a firewall. And in that case, all you need to do is just pay a small amount and you will be able to download them and use them for your studies. So ultimately, you can decide whether it is invading or not, but I would just like to stress on this fact. Anyway, as I told you earlier, though my general topic was digital humanities, in the later part of this lecture, from now on, I'll be dealing with digital literary studies. Fine. So what is this digital literary studies? How digital methods are used to study literary texts. We'll be focusing exclusively on that. And what is the objective of this particular PPT, this particular lecture? We are going to see about the intersections between digital methods and literary studies. That is, what are the possibilities, what has been happening so far, and also what are the limitations. See, this is an oft-outed discipline. You have to understand it's been 40 years, but still there are no takers. So many people are still questioning about the validity of computational approaches to literary studies. So we are going to discuss both about the possibilities and the limitations of this oft-outed literary space, right? So for sources, see, not much material is available about digital literary studies. I really don't know how it is abroad, because there it is much more popular. This is basically a personal opinion, but I think it is true to a great extent. Here, it is an up and coming area, and the books that are available are also very limited. So I chose particular books. Only if I had the complete book, I chose it as my source. So anyway, these books are very popular. See, the first book, which is my source, is Morton Paul Eves, The Digital Humanities and Literary Studies. Now it was published only in the year 2021. And then you have this book, Distant Horizons, Digital Evidence and Literary Change by Ted Underwood. Now this is published in 2019, I think. And of course, this article, What is Digital Humanities and What's It Doing in English Departments by M.J. Kirschenbaum. Now all these are the sources of my lecture. So you have to understand, I'm a literary person too. I do not have any computational experience, so I cannot talk to you about that aspect. So what I have done is I have chosen representative textbooks and articles. I have read them, I have analyzed them, and I'm going to give you what these authors have presented as their findings. Fine. So before we move into detail into digital literary studies, you have to know about one particular concept, that is distant reading. So this analysis method you should be familiar with. Now, as literature major students and teachers, we are all very familiar with close reading. That is what we do on an everyday basis, is it not? When you are handling a poem or a text or any novel for that matter, what you do is close reading. Even for research, that is what is done. But when you are using computer programs to study literature, what happens is not close reading, you call it distant reading. And what does this distant reading yield? It yields quantitative study of literary texts. So when close reading gives qualitative study, distant reading will give you quantitative study. Fine. So the difference between qualitative and quantitative, we will get to know shortly, but just understand that there is this reading process called distant reading, which is extremely unpopular amongst literary men, right? So talking about the history, I told you this area is not all that popular, but if you see, even as early as 1923, someone has suggested that we have to introduce quantitative analysis into literature. Now, this was one Vernon Lee. He was a famed Victorian and Edwardian era aesthetician. Now, this person in her work, The Handling of Words, has spoken about introduction of statistical experiment in literature. So not just that, in the year 1969, the Dartmouth College has even offered a module to students titled Literary Analysis by Computer. Fine. So I would just like to highlight it to show how ancient this idea is. So I'm also presenting some findings. So you might wonder, we have not gone into anything in detail. What are these findings about? But I think you should know this before we go into anything in detail. So the first finding is digital methods can bring us closer to literary texts. So though what we are going to do is only a quantitative study, we will see how this study is going to take us closer to a text. And then a solution to the limitations on reading made by finite human lifespan. So in the book by Martin Paul Eve, there is a very interesting study where he states, he takes the example of the year 2015. Now, it seems in this year, the books published in English only in this year is 222,000 books. Okay. So if a critic who is interested in, say, a particular genre or about a wide variety of genre, if he wants to read all these books published only in 1 year in English, he has to read 222,000 books. So now, how can a person read so many books? If you take WHO, they say the average lifespan of a human being is, say, 70 years. So if you take 70 as a lifespan of a human being, that person should start reading from the age of 10. Okay, and he should go on up till 70 or 71. And each day he should read 10 books each. So is it even possible? So this is unimaginable. So what does it mean? Even the best of the best critics who says that he knows much about literature and that he or she has read voraciously about literature cannot read the entire gamut of literature published even in one particular year. So what does this mean? This means human beings can take the help of a machine, which will help them read and analyze more number of books. Fine, we will see how it is done later. And then one more point, one can better understand genre and visualization and form through visualization and spatialization. So if you see digital literary studies, the results are presented in the form of graphs, maps. Fine, so it might be funny and unbelievable, but then we will come to know that how these graphs, maps, and charts will help us understand literary analysis better. And of course, look at the last word. I have given a disclaimer and it is given in red. In fact, Martin Paul Eve himself says he is very excited about all the possibilities that digital literary studies can do, but at the same time, he's a bit anxious too. So I too would like to present this positional disclaimer. Let us not talk about whether we want computational studies in literature or not, but let us analyze what this study can do. Fine. So we will start with the basis for computational analysis. For this, you have to be familiar with this idea called decompositional thinking. Now, this idea was proposed by one D.L. Parnas in his text. Now, what is decompositional thinking? See, we are not talking about a human being here. It is a computer, a machine that is going to work on the text. So for a machine to work, what is necessary? You have to break a bigger problem into smaller solvable units. Fine? Something that could be addressed easily by a machine. Something that is empirically verifiable. So if you give such a decompositional question, a hypothesis, the computer or the algorithm can very easily work on it. So this decompositional thinking is an important idea, keep in mind. So I will give you the very first example. So what is decompositional thinking? We will start with this author, Stephen King. I'm sure all of you will be very familiar with this horror king, Stephen King, right? So in his 2000 memoir on writing, King gives a lot of ideas. There is this exclusive area called writer's advice. Is it not? Plato, even in his Phaedrus, has given writers some advice. Fine. So this is not something new. Stephen King has also tried the same. And what does he say? When you are writing, he says, don't use too many adverbs. He says the adverb is not your friend. So what could be the computational decomposed question for an analysis like this mean? Now we can use this statement and test it on the writer itself. And in that case, the question would be, how frequently does Stephen King use adverbs, and does this change throughout his career as his writing matures? So this man has given an advice in his memoir, and what are we trying to do? We are trying to test it on the writer himself. So an algorithm is created to check how many adverbs are there in all of Stephen King's textbooks. Now this is a laborious work. Just imagine a person sitting and reading all his works, on top of it underlining all the adverbs. It could take a lot of time, but then a creation of an algorithm might also take some time. But ultimately, when you run the algorithm, the results, you will get them quite easily and much sooner. So see, this is how it is represented. Do you see? It's more like a bar chart, or whatever you call it. So starting from Carrie up to Revival onwards, there are a host of novels, and the relative frequency in which the adverbs have been used in all these novels has been depicted here. So though Stephen King gave the advice, it looks like he himself has not stuck to it. He has been using comparatively adverbs, in some case fewer, and in some case more number of adverbs in his works. So this is one study, right? Now I'm presenting you the challenges. Fine, I have given you an example. Let us analyze the challenges now itself, so that we can go into more detailed areas. So what are the challenges? See, the problem that I presented to you, Stephen King, it is a very simple problem. Just analyzing adverbs. Computational algorithm writers say it is easier to write algorithms for such programs. Now, if we decide to check for, say, similes, the use of similes in Stephen King's work as compared to the other writers of America. Now, this decompositional question, it's very, very vast. The algorithm writing might take a long time. Fine. So the idea is you might have complicated problems. Fine, when you are analyzing novels or other works, and sometimes the result may even have low accuracy rates. What does it mean? Even the study that we saw just now, it seems there is a possibility of having 3% error. Fine. So out of 100, there could be 3% error. And then software development cannot be done in isolation. I am a literary person. See, I have a question. I cannot sit at home and design an algorithm, can I? So what should I do? I should get in touch with other computer scientists and other linguists, and then and only then I can frame an algorithm. Fine. And the legal availability of the texts themselves. Sometime before I told you how texts are so easily available on the digital platforms, but that is not the case for computational studies. The problem is you cannot use any and every plain text available on the computer for digital literary studies. Those works, they should not have DRM. This DRM, it actually stands for Digital Rights Management Technology. They call it DRM. It seems every textbook will have DRM. It's like a copyright. And you cannot actually strip a book of this DRM. In US, it seems it is a punishable offense. So writers and also algorithm writers, they will have to look for a textbook that doesn't have this DRM. So they also make a reference to this Hathi Trust Research Center. Now, what is this Hathi Trust Research Center? They have a collection of 16.7 million books without DRM. plain textbooks, which can be used for digital literary studies. So most of the people use textbook from Hathi Research Trust, primary sources or other sources, so that they can do their research, carry on with their research. Now, the next challenge is data sets, graphs, interactive timelines, digital artifacts. All this is not recognized as a valid scholarly output. It is understandable, is it not? When you're carrying out a research in literature, probably you will ask your scholar to apply a theory to find out a fresh perspective, is it not? If he or she comes with some drawings, will you accept? Maybe if it is ELT, it is a different criteria. But then for literature, all these are not even accepted as the norm. So that is one problem. And with all the prevailing conditions, if someone runs a test and finally if they bring a result, people tend to find fault. They criticize the result also as to why do we need such results. But anyway, we will also talk about the discontents that are associated with digital literary studies. Now, what is the first discontent? Many people believe it is neoliberal. So if you are interested in literary theory at all, or anything that is happening currently in our country or in the world at large, you will understand what neoliberalism is it not? It is a market-based approach. So why are they blaming this area to be neoliberal? Because they feel only the Silicon Valley will be benefited. Is it not? That is only the software makers will be benefited out of this. So much money will have to be spent, is it not, to make all these programs. And people feel that humanities don't necessarily want this to happen. Fine, they kind of feel that there is a corporatist restructuring of humanities. Now corporates are taking over the whole world. Now, do we want them to take over humanities too? That is a significant question. And, Foucault actually mentioned once, that is the state under the supervision of the market. He said that was something very dangerous. The state being under the supervision of the market. Now, neoliberalism is just that and nothing else. Fine. But anyway, the authors of this textbook that I have mentioned, they purposefully say that digital literary studies is not neoliberal. Why? Because, see, when will a corporate or a company come forward to do something? When they can make a lot of money out of it. Of course, creating the algorithm is something different, but I apply it to a particular humanities problem, literary problem. I try to find a solution. Now, is the solution monetizable? Most of the times it is not. Is it not? So that is why the author says digital literary studies is not neoliberal. And they also say that it is apolitical. What is apolitical? That is, it doesn't have any connection with any of the political happenings that are taking place in the country. On the one hand, digital computation may give importance to aestheticism, but mostly it gives importance to form, because we are analyzing only the quantitative aspects of it. So they are calling it apolitical, but in the later part of the lecture, we can decide whether it is apolitical or not. And the next point, digital humanities and ethics. This is something that is very, very important. Now, what ethics are they talking about? See, we usually believe that the internet is a very democratic place. It's not like the real world. There's too much equality in the internet. Nothing like that. You must have heard of terms like Google washing, Google bombing. It is a technique through which, now say suppose I have a website. I have very good material, authentic material. Now, when someone is typing a keyword related to that particular website, what will you expect? That your website will be at least in the first page of the search page, is it not? But that doesn't always happen. See, Google and other browsers, they have this method where each word in a website will be linked to some other word. Okay, so the web page which contains the maximum number of link will be the first page to be displayed on the computer. Do you understand? The page which has a maximum number of links to other pages, or vice versa. where other pages have maximum number of links to this page. That page will be presented first. So as a result of which, what happens, you can manipulate. Now I have a web page and I try to manipulate whatever is there in my page. I create link after link after link. So what happens? The content may be false, but then I am manipulating by creating so many links, as a result of which, if I click the keyword, the first website to come on the page will be mine. Do you understand? So this is what is called Google washing or Google bombing. Now there are several measures in place to curb such activities, but still such activities are going on. You would hear about them on the news, where if you just give something like who's the biggest fool in the world, sometimes names of the presidents of some countries will come as the answer. Now, how are such things possible? It is because of all these links that they establish. It is mostly done in a very comical sense, but it could be dangerous too. Fine. So what is the other ethic that they are talking about here? See, we were all colonized for a long time. Fine. So the West has been experiencing dominion. Now, what is happening in the internet? Say, suppose I am a programmer and I have certain biases. Fine. So I write my computational program with this bias. So what happens? Ultimately, the result will also be biased. Fine. So that is what they say. Ethics must be followed. Otherwise, there will be some dangerous consequences. Now, this is one other discontent. Fine. And then digital humanities doesn't deal with culture. Maybe this is true to a certain extent, is it not? We are not dealing with the huge background, the backdrop of culture at all. We are just dealing with the text and what is happening in the text. And finally, the field replicated social privilege despite early engagement by women. This was something very interesting. When I read it, I was surprised. It seems computer in the 1940s was a word which was used to refer to women who actually engaged themselves in doing mathematical work. We have heard of steno, typist, is it not? Likewise, computer, it referred to women. Now, after 1960s, when computers became very popular, now this became a masculine role. The men took over, replacing the women. And when computer became an electromechanical device, it was associated totally with the men. Just like how at home you say girls should play with Barbie dolls and boys will play with other mechanized toys. So that is what happened. So that is why it says social privileges have been replicated despite early engagement by women. Fine. So these are some of the discontents connected to digital literary studies. Yes, now we come to computational methods. Now, what are the different methods available? How has it been used on literary text to find what? So the first method is to find out authorship attribution. For this, they use methods like stylometry and delta method. We are not going to deal in detail about what stylometry is or how it works. Just these are some of the algorithms that are available. So to begin with stylometry, see, in the early 1990s, they unearthed this poem, A Funeral Elegy. So using stylometry, initially they attributed it to Shakespeare. But then after repeated testing, they found out that the original author, the poet, was not Shakespeare, but it was John Ford. So what does it mean? Stylometry is not all that effective. Fine, it is an algorithm where you feed the style of the poet or the author and you try to run it on various texts and also on the text that you want, and finally find out how it is and finally find out the result. But anyway, it was unsuccessful because it led them to believe that it was written by Shakespeare. But then over a period of few years, they evolved another method which was called the delta method. Now this used more or less the same technique. See here the important terms. It's more or less a cross-textual comparison. Fine. You feed the algorithm with the text will use all the words and compare it with the other textbooks to see the frequency with which certain words or structures appear, and based on it, it will ascertain authorship. Now, delta method was found to be more successful than stylometry. Not just that, delta method is also used for some other purpose. Apart from finding out who the author is, you can also use it to compare authorial features. Now you must have heard of James Joyce. Just a while ago, we discussed about Ulysses. And there is this other author, Flann O'Brien. Now, Flann O'Brien is believed to be the disciple of James Joyce. Okay, he has followed Joyce to a great extent that Bryan's novels are filled with references from James Joyce. Not only that, the style of writing, the content, everything imitates Joyce to a great extent. Now, Bryan has written a number of novels. Now, if you want to compare the authorial features of Joyce and Flann O'Brien, you can do it using this delta method. See now, and this is the result. Now, what have they done? See, in this graph, you have the x-axis represented by 0, 5,000, is it not? Now, this represents the novel Ulysses. Ulysses has been run against all the other textbooks of O'Brien. Fine. Ulysses, cross-textual comparison with O'Brien's other novels. So do you see everything, each of the novels has been represented with the help of lines, okay, that actually move up and move down. So what can you find out from this? See, there is a line which is below. Do you see this particular line? It is so closer to the x-axis. So what does it mean? This book, the authorial features of this book, see, if you see the color, it matches with the book Hard Life. I'm sorry, the picture is not very clear, but these are the pictures available on the internet too. See, Hard Life by O'Brien happens to be very closely associated to James Joyce Ulysses, not just Hard Life. Once again, they have this green line also. That also tells you what? Because apart from this, they want you to know where Ulysses stands to. So see, this green and this, everywhere there is a very close connection. And that is represented on the x-axis. Now there are other textbooks of O'Brien too, which are compared. Now some of which is also similar to James Joyce's writing. Do you understand? This is how you compare authorial features using delta method. Of course, the algorithm is not there. You can try clicking on delta method on the net. They give you the mathematical formula. Even the algorithm is there. You won't understand head or tail of it. Fine. But then ultimately, if you run the algorithm, this is what you get. Fine. So apart from authorship attribution, what else can you get to know by using delta method? You can understand the life cycle of genres. Now, as HS students, we all know, and teachers, we do know that literary history is something very important. Initially, we study social history, then we study literary history. We try to connect and interrelate both to understand. And in our study of literary history, we also study about genre, how it changes, how long it lives, how it dies an early death. But most of the cases, we are not very clear. Why, when you say neoclassicism and romanticism, also a particular year is given. This is when neoclassical trends came to an end and romanticism came to the fore. But that is not exactly the case, is it not? You cannot say a particular trend began in a particular year. So using these computational algorithms, they try to find the life cycle of genres. Say, for example, Gothic fiction. It started with what? Castle of Otranto, 1764. Is it not? And some scholars, some critics believe that the period of Gothic fiction is over. While some others say Gothic fiction is still being written in some form or the other, and it also carries the legacy of what has been written. Now, there are some other genres, say sentimental novels and all. It was very popular during the 18th century. Fine, if you remember the novel Sentimental Man and all. Now, this genre lived only for 20 to 30 years. After that, no one wrote sentimental novels. So if you take these novels, you will, if you compare, it seems we can find out how these novels that have, say, a 25 or a 30-year-old window will have similar language. The same set of linguistic terms will be used in the language. Now, they try to use this and they try to study, say, detective fiction, science fiction, which has been there for a very long time. And what did they find surprisingly? That from 1764 till this point of time, Gothic fiction is being written, and these fictions, they have similar set of linguistic terms. So it is not just a set of books or a score of books that has been analyzed. Hundreds and thousands of books have been analyzed by the computer's program, and this is the conclusion. So this cannot be done by a human being, especially within a short span of time. In fact, science fiction and all, they found out that see, what they did was initially they chose a website which listed all the science fiction books. So they ran the program on all these science fiction books, and they found out that science fiction books have certain words in common. Say little, big, massive, large, all sorts of numeric terms. If you start from say Gulliver's Travels, there itself the size comes into play. First, he goes to Lilliput, where everyone was small. Then he goes to Brobdingnag, where he was like a Lilliputian. Do you understand? So from there onwards up till now, it seems these words are being continuously used in the textbook, not here and there, but in massive numbers. So this is a great find, is it not? Then, yes, now that we are talking about authorship, genre, there's something else also that we have to know. Authorship of poetry by computers. In the beginning, I told you we have interactive bots that can mimic human beings. Now that is the basic idea. They create these bots so that they can mimic human beings and they can become more intelligent, much better. Fine. So computers are fed with programs. But remember, these programs are written by human beings only. But what do the computers do? They process these programs, and it seems they are capable of writing their own poetry. Now there was one such test, and the name of the program was Evolution. It was an award-winning Java-based AI application, artificial intelligence application. Now, this particular application was fed the works of Johannes Helden. He's a Swedish artist. He's a poet as well as a musician. All his works were fed into this software, and it was believed that this software will start creating poems. Evolution means what? It will write a poem, it will keep on changing the style, it will evolve. All the poems will be written on the style of Johannes Helden. Do you remember? Just that is, he will be imitated to such a great extent that many people thought that this poet will not have work anymore because there is a machine that will keep replicating him. They even thought that this machine will pass Alan Turing's imitation game. So you must have seen the movie, The Imitation Game. You must be familiar with this idea also. There's not much time to discuss about it in detail, but what is imitation game? Initially, imitation game, you had an interrogator who will question two separate individuals, and based on the answers he receives, he will just find out whether it is a male or female. That's how it started. Now, this was used in computer to find out whether the person who's responding to you is a human being or a machine. If the interrogator is not able to find out, it means what? Then the machine is very, very intelligent. So they thought this evolution will pass Alan Turing's test, but unfortunately it did not. Because evolution, it created poems, but those poems, it lacked specificity, it lacked coherence. Fine, so we don't know whether anytime sooner some other program may write poems similar to a poet, or it may even surpass him. So that is all left to be seen, but thankfully evolution failed. But then at the same time, we have to keep in mind that computers are generating business and sports journalism. Now, particularly sports journalism, if you take, you see the content will be the same. This team played against this team. This was the score. This team won. So when you feed such information into the computers, it seems they are successfully able to write sports journalism articles. And it seems human beings, it was tested and it was found that human beings were not able to find out the difference between human written and machine written content. Okay, so it is quite alarming, is it not? And then there is this company called Narrative Science. Now they are corporate specialists, and they say that their job is to make computers create data that are humanizing. Okay, That is ultimately a computer writes poem, a computer, it writes an essay or whatever. But if you read, you will not be able to find out, decipher whether it was written by a human being or a machine. Fine. So they are telling that they want to find, they are on the path to finding such reforms which can change narratives totally, which can make machines create intelligent narratives. So how do they make machines do this? Through chiastic mode. You must have heard of it. Chiastic means reversal. Say, for example, something like when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Do you see? Reversal of words. So such reversal is fed into the program, and through such reversal, the programs try to create text. Fine. But anyway, what you have to understand is at this point of time, without human beings, machines cannot do anything. Human beings will have to calibrate, you have to feed the program, you have to feed the words, but the machines are only trying to manipulate with them. So I was reminded of what Donna Haraway says. She said this long before. Our machines are disturbingly lively, whereas human beings, we are becoming frighteningly inert. Right? So once again, the bias that I spoke to you about, if the algorithmic writer is going to be racist or sexist or homophobic or ableist. Ableist means what? You have prejudice against people with disability. So if one such person is going to write a program, then what is going to happen? Digital literary studies is going to be doomed. Okay, it cannot tolerate such appropriation and triviality. Fine. So we come to the next test. So far we saw delta method, stylometry, and what do computers do? How capable they are in writing their own poetry. And the next test is kernel density estimate metric. Now, in literary criticism, we have what is called deformance, which is happening regularly. Now, deformance is a term put forward by Lisa Samuels and Jerome McGann. What is deformance? The idea is, say you are presented with a text. What do you do as a critic? You read the text, okay, and by taking evidences from the text, you try to reshape the text. You try to give the text a perspective. Fine. You are a very convincing critic, as a result of which ultimately what happens? A reader who is reading your criticism, and if he goes back to the text again, he is not able to read it in any other light. Okay, you have actually reframed, reconceptualized his understanding of the text. So this restructuralizing is called what? Deformation. Formation, deformation. So literary criticism, what happens very often? Deformation happens in literary criticism. And there is a belief that visual representations can also represent such deformance. Say, for example, you must have heard about Kurt Vonnegut. Fine. So when he's a very popular writer now, but when he was doing his master's thesis, this was what he tried in the University of Chicago. He took novelistic plot lines and he converted the plots into graphs. However, this thesis was then rejected by the university. Fine. So this is one way of reductive mapping. So what do computational algorithms do? They help you in reductive mapping. That is, you feed it a vast amount of text and it gives you a small diagram. Okay, reductive mapping, using which you can very well understand what is happening. So now there's this person by name McClure. He tried to use this kernel density test on Tolstoy's War and Peace, and he wanted to find out how words are distributed inside the text. You know that this is a novel which has more than 500 characters. It runs to several thousand pages. It has different sections, right? It talks about war, it talks about peace, it talks about history. You have a historian, you have a meta-historian. There are different narrators in this novel, different narrative styles. But see, by analyzing this novel, what did he find out? I have actually quoted whatever he has told. We can just read it. See, while some words are spaced evenly throughout the document and their distribution doesn't say much about the overall structure of the text, others have a really strong semantic focus. That is, they occur unevenly, but they tend to hang together with other words that orbit around a shared topic. Meaning what? Some words, it appears all over. They do not seem to have any meaning. special meaning or special significance. But other words, they appear only in combination with certain other words. Okay, say for example, if you open a random page in the book, if you come across words like Natasha, Sonia, mother, love, tender, automatically you can understand that you are in the PC section of the novel. But if you're going to come across words like Napoleon, war, military, general, immediately you can understand that it is war section. Meaning what? Natasha will appear only in combination with these words. Napoleon will appear only in combination with these words. Fine. So this you can find out using kernel density estimate test. Now this is a graph. It shows how often horse is used. Okay. See where it crests and where there is a trough. Fine. So you can do it for all other words. And this is density similar score. So what have they done? They have taken one word, Natasha, and they have tried to compute a similarity score with every other word in the text. That is, wherever Natasha appears, Sonia appears 0.7 times out of once, okay? And Countess appears 0.6 times. Mother appears 0.6 times. So every other word is tested against, each word can be tested against every other word, and the result will also be published in descending order, right? So this is another drawing. Once again, this represents war and peace. I'm sorry, the picture is not at all clear. This is how it is on the internet. So if you see on the left side, it is war. Okay, it's not visible here. On the right side, it is peace, and on top, it is history. Okay, the three parts into which the novel is divided. Fine. And you have words. See, these words are used only here, only in war sections, whereas these words appear only in peace sections. Whereas look, some words that are here appear only in history sections, but whereas there are some other words, no, which commingle and appear all over. Fine. So what can you understand through this diagram, this representation? The way the algorithm manages to cluster portions of the narrative together in terms that make sense for the plot based on linguistic similitude. As McClure notes, war to the left, peace to the right, and history on top. And although the precise orientation of one element to another here is not meaningful, it is the clustering that matters. You might ask, what is war? What is peace? How is it connected to history? All that you will understand if you read the novel. That is different. But then you are able to find out the linguistic similitude in the novel. What could be the theme when we are talking about war? What could be the theme when we are talking about peace? Now, such things become obvious even by glancing at representations like this. Not only this, see, the author goes on to point out how Napoleon Bonaparte, now this is a name, right? The name of the ruler, but in the text, it seems Napoleon appears. That is the first name, Napoleon. It appears wherever there are words like battle, history, military strategy, and tactics are used. But whereas Bonaparte is used where? It is used in aristocratic saloons, it seems. Fine, especially in the PC sections. So this is also an important finding. So what does it mean? Napoleon is the man himself who is actually taking part in the battle. But Bonaparte is the Russian imagination of the man, which is being discussed in all the Petersburg and Moscow parties. So do you understand? So such things you can understand even without reading the novel in detail. Fine. So such visualizations, what is the benefit? With speed, you can come to understand certain thematic aspects. So the author is not telling you don't read the text. You can, fine. But these will help you analyze the text on a different scale. In fact, one of the important roles of digital literary studies is that you can apply a particular algorithm, study hundreds or thousands of novels, come to a conclusion, fine, and later use this conclusion, try to do a close reading on a few novels. Do you understand? What the machine does is a distant reading, which you cannot do, but the machine can do it for you. But you can do a close reading and see if this hypothesis is correct or not. Fine. So earlier we saw how it gives importance only to form. So it's not just the form. The theme is also important. Okay, even the thematic overview of the text can be represented. Fine. So they have given this the name computational formalism. Such kind of an analysis is called computational formalism. It's almost time. Give me 10 minutes. We have only very few slides. I will try to finish it. Okay, so using this kernel metric, they have also analyzed one more novel, Cloud Atlas. Now you should all be very familiar with this novel. Fine. Cloud Atlas, initially in UK, it was published with a different editor. It was Scepter Publishers. And then when it went to US, the editor changed and Random House published it. So what happened? These two editors have edited the textbook in different ways. Fine. So I have a Cloud Atlas myself. Fine. And it is the US edition. Fine. I have read only the US edition. And I didn't know until I read this that the UK edition is very different in certain parts because the editors have changed. Okay. So what have they done in this analysis is to consider just one section from the novel. It's called the Sonmi section. Fine. It's like the interview, question answer that is happening between two characters. And they have tried to produce what is called the Sankey diagram. See, the diagram is here. So it may appear complicated, but it's nothing of the sort. See, on the left side, it refers to the UK edition. On the right side, it is the US Random House edition. All these straight lines, do you see the gray areas? If it is straight, it means what? A line or a context here will have a functional equivalent here. It doesn't mean to say you are matching line for line. Do you understand? A sentence, what are you doing? How did you react? Say, for example, there is a line. And here you will have a line. How did you react for this hubris? So it does a similar function. So you will have a straight line. Now, when there are these white spaces, it simply means what? That a line or a context in text A or text B doesn't have a functional equivalence in the other text. Okay, the function will be present in text A, but it may not be in text B. So now do you see this line crossing over? I have not given the full picture. If you see the full picture, you can see 4 such crossings over. And what do these crossings over refer to? That what happens in the later part of the text here in UK edition happens earlier in the US edition. So a textbook has been cut, rearranged, reordered, and all this can be analyzed for you by a machine. But we won't know it unless a machine, because we won't look for US edition or UK edition, and we don't read it that way. Fine. So machines can help you do that also. And almost the last part, which is called, this is not a method. See, this is geocriticism, is basically the way to study geographic places in literary criticism. Fine. This is what we call spatial turn, because we have come across authors in recent times who have represented their novels. A lot of maps are being drawn. So if you see this Grishaverse novel, you must have read them, right? They are fantasy fiction written by Leigh Bardugo. In all the Grishaverse novels, you will find such maps. Fine. So analyzing these maps, these literary maps. Of course, this is a fantasy fiction. This is not even an original place. It is just a place that is based on Russia. Fine. So you can analyze these maps, and just like a person, a cartographer draws and analyzes an ordinary map, you have literary cartography where you can read these maps, analyze the spaces, see what it means. So it all started with Bakhtin's chronotope, and it has come down to geocriticism. Fine. So this is a separate area in itself, which cannot be discussed now. You can go back to your literary theory textbooks and read about it. But the idea is such literary cartography can be done with the help of digital computation. So there are a number of interesting projects, but I would just like to highlight one project which is Matthew Sangster's Romantic London project. So what is it? See, he has taken one map of London. Fine. Richard Horvard's map of London. And what has he done? he has overlaid this map with a number of other textbooks. See, there is a book, Harry's List of Covent Garden Ladies, Forey's New Guide for Foreigners, John Smith's Antiquities of London, Thomas Malton's A Picturesque Tour Through the Cities of London, so on and so forth. Different kinds of books. They are not all maps. They are books about the society. Why? Look at the last book, The Prelude. Wordsworth's Prelude. Prelude is there in 14 parts, but the 7th book is about Wordsworth's visit to the city of London itself. So he has represented London. So using all these books, if you see, they all belong to more or less the same period, or at least 50 years or so. They come in close contact with that period. And using this, they have tried to analyze a map. Okay, I've not presented that map and all, but what can we understand from this? Especially we are literary men, right? So what do we come to know about this by overlaying, say, Wordsworth's Prelude against the map and all the other texts? See, Wordsworth stayed in different part of London, but somehow in his writings in Prelude, he talks about the prostitutes, the seedy side of London. He talks about his visit to the Drury Lane, where there are drama theaters. He talks about seeing all those dramas and what is happening there. And the poem seems to be a psychological expression of his body. Do you understand? See, Wordsworth is not carried away by the greatness of London. In fact, he only condemns this urban spectacle. See, he uses words, phrases like painted bloom, false tints. This is how he explains. He describes London. So by reading this map, by placing all these texts next to one another, overlaying one on top of the other, what can you understand? We understand body, sexuality, and theater as a connection, as a nexus in romantic poetry for discourse on the condemnation of popular urban fixation. So that conclusion, you don't necessarily come only from Wordsworth's textbook, come to only from Wordsworth's book. You can also decipher it from the other books as well. So this is done using what? Geographical Information System. Just like we have GPS, the software is GIS, Geographical Information System. There is one other project, Mapping the Lakes. Now this is also connected to the lake poets. Who are they? Wordsworth, Coleridge, Southey. However, Wordsworth is not a part of this project. They have taken the accounts of Coleridge and Southey, their excursions into the Lake District, and they have tried to come up with a map. The map is very much available online. You can go to lancaster.uk.org. Fine. They have the full map and also the study associated with the map. Now, this is also one way of analyzing text through pictures. And now that maps and other literary cartographies play a very important role in critical theory, this too can help us in the long run. So finally, we come to the questions. Initially itself, we didn't have questions, we did have discontents, but finally I'm posing these questions. I'm not going to give you any answers. You can think of your own answers because it is up to you. Fine, no one is forcing you anything down your throat. You can conclude whether digital literary studies is really literary studies or not, whether literary studies scholars should produce data, code, graphs, and should we reward them for doing so? And finally, whether this new model of threat, whether this new model will be a threat to our discipline or it will turn out to be an evolved state of practice. So you, by this time, I know you can all arrive at your own answers. So by way of conclusion, what I would like to say is, see, when it comes to literature, we are always theorizing, but making use of this digital technology, it will help us lessen this theorization and it will help us focus on the text itself. Fine. But there is one problem. See, I read a book, I analyze the book. Say if one of my students or somebody, if they have stated something wrong, I can always correct it because I read the book, I know what is there, and it's just a statement which can be corrected. But then if it is a data, fine, which is computed by a machine, and if there is an error, then what happens? We don't have such extensive knowledge or the statistical methods to correct it immediately. Fine. And for a trained critic also, it is not possible. Okay, so this is one problem. However, we have to understand that in the future, digital practices in literary studies will become more popular. We cannot ignore it as we are doing it now. Statistical questions will start to enter the lexicon of literary studies paper. And it would be prudent for humanities discipline to begin to think about what kind of skills a new generation of scholars might need to avail themselves of such understandings. Fine. So thank you all of you. So before I close, I would just like to show you just one website. Just hold on one moment. Are you able to see the screen? Ma'am, I didn't get you.
Ma'am, yes, ma'am. Screen is visible, ma'am.
It's visible. Okay, so this is from the website that I told you earlier. If you go, there is one more DH on Jane Austen's major novels. We saw about word frequencies and all, is it not? Just see how it has been used here. All the novels by Jane Austen, it is here. You have this FID, free indirect discourse, free direct discourse and all is there. There is a lot of discussion about that in this website. Fine. So you can go and read about it. It will teach you so many things about narrative. Fine. And apart from that, I was telling you, counting words, of what use or what purpose will it be, we might wonder. But see how they have done. See, all these characters have used direct speech. Okay. And indirect diction has been used by all these characters. That is the narrator playing the roles. And just see, I will click on to show character types, the marriage status of characters, character class status. And if you click on any of this, say for example, Elizabeth Bennet, a small screen, a pop-up will come where look at the unique words used by Bennet in this novel, 272. Totally 537 content words have been used. Fingers have been repeated 3 times. Relative has been repeated 3 times. See the entire list. For each and every character. That too, direct speech, indirect speech, based on character type, based on sex, based on marriage status. No, you can read it in a number of ways. You just cannot say this is just counting of words. Is it not? See, there is a special study on gender also. If you see the language, it is all there in this website. Please go through it, where they will tell you how the language of Elizabeth Bennet and Darcy are similar. It seems no other characters speak the same language. Fine. And the only person who comes close to their language is Mr. Collins. So do you see, you can understand about the politics that is going on within the novel, what sort of language they are using, and using these words, you can study a lot about that. It's actually a very, very interesting study. I have noted down a lot of things to speak about this particular instance, but I don't find the time. It seems the male characters in these novels, they never use the term wedding, and the female characters, they don't use the term matrimony. So this itself, they say, has something to speak on gender. Fine. And they say by analyzing all these words, you try to get an impressionistic picture of the character, analyzing all these word frequencies. So you can go and explore all this. You can even use it in your classroom when and where necessary. Fine. So I think the entire lecture was useful and resourceful. So within the limited time, I've tried to do what is possible. So probably if we get a chance some other time, we can get together and discuss some more. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants, kindly post your queries in the chat box.
Participants, are you there? Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Somehow my Zoom screen itself has vanished. I don't know what happened.
Ma'am, you are visible, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Someone is asking asking you to suggest some research topic on digital humanities, ma'am.
See, as I told you, I cannot specifically say work on this topic or that, because the problem is when you say digital humanities, we don't have the resources. You cannot do it individually. Do you understand? You need people like linguists, like people who are experts in writing computational algorithms. You will have to sit with them and work, and God only knows how all these algorithms will turn out. So this is a project that has to be undertaken on a mass level. Okay, so the website that I showed you sometime before, if you see, it was all universities. They all have special funds, they have special projects. In fact, they also create alt-ac jobs for many people. What is this alt-ac? Alternative academic jobs. In foreign universities, you don't just have professors, you have people who exclusively work in these projects. Okay, they don't have anything to do with academics. So you cannot do that. Instead, what you can do is what I suggested a while ago. You can just look for all the distant reading analysis so far that has been generated. The website that I showed you now itself will be enough, but please read Distant Horizons by Ted Underwood. That also will give you an idea. He has tried to trace the genre through the 19th century, through the 20th century. And what you can do is, you can say that such and such a finding has been done through computational analysis. Fine. And see, those findings will be done for thousands of novels at a time, for all the novels written, say, during 20th century. But what you can do, you can choose representative novels, apply the findings of computational algorithm and see if it is correct. Now, you should not ask me, why should I do something like that? That is also a study. See, in science, you have what is called null hypothesis, null results, sorry, or negative results. That is a science man, a researcher, a scientist. What he can do is he can conduct a research and finally he can say, I failed. But is it even agreeable in literature field? Just imagine a critic writing pages and pages and finally telling, I didn't find out anything. We will call him a fool, is it not? But what digital literary studies, what it does for us is it analyzes large scale material and it provides some findings. So you can use that findings and check whether those findings are correct or not. I feel in the future that will become a popular area of study.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there is a question that can digital technology be used in finding plagiarism in literary textbooks?
Plagiarism in literary textbooks.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Are you suggesting that novelists or poets themselves are into plagiarism?
Ma'am, can we use digital technologies to find plagiarisms?
That is what we are doing now, right? This Urkund and all other softwares. We are using digital technology to find plagiarism. We have so many softwares, is it not? Some you can run even from the confines of your home. You don't even have to pay any money. And you can check whether the text has been plagiarized or not, whatever you have written. You can check others' content too.
Ma'am, there is another question that how far Indian literature is digitalized?
It is, see, as I told you in the beginning, it's been what, 40 years or so since it started in the West. So I cannot give you an exact survey, but from what I have come to know, there are studies going on, mostly in conjunction with Western universities, and some projects are being handled here by IITs also. But the issue is the amount of money required. Now in this textbook, Martin Paulive's textbook that I was talking to you about, he makes a reference. He tells how several $million have been allotted for study in humanities, it seems, in US. I think it was in the year 2019. But then out of which only 1 or 2%, 2.97%, if I'm not wrong, only so much percentage of amount is allotted for digital literary studies. So what does it mean? And that too, this amount is not for building labs, infrastructure. It is mainly for the labor used, that is the person who will write the algorithm. So there are lots of issues surrounding writing of algorithms and the infrastructure concern. So in developing countries, generally it will only be a slow phenomenon. We cannot actually compare ourselves with the Westerners, because when I started itself, I told you about the issues surrounding digital literary studies. So even in the West, it is only been slowly being accepted by others. So it might take its own time in our country too. So comparatively, it is slower, right?
Thank you, ma'am. There is another question that if we want to digitize the contents in regional literature or in translated works, what are the parameters that you have to consider?
Copywriting. We cannot digitize anything and everything. It involves a lot of process. Now you have certain nationalized writers. Now in our own Tamil context, you have Kalki Krishnamurthy. If you go to a book expo, if you go to a book exhibition, you will find almost all the publishers having books written by Kalki Krishnamurthy. It's been translated. You have so many English translations. Even a few years before, it was not there. Now, very recently, Zero Degree publication has come out with a new version close to the release of Ponniyin Selvan movie. So these works, they don't have royalty issues. Fine. Their works have been nationalized by the government itself. So a period of time will have to pass. Do you understand? A book that was written yesterday or last year or a century before, just like that, you cannot play with the copyright issue. You cannot digitize it. You will just have to find out if the book has royalty. If it is nationalized, then it is no issue at all. Then you will have to follow procedures requiring for digitizing it. Otherwise, you will have to move through proper channels, get copyrights, and then proceed. So I'm sorry, I cannot tell you elaborately about this copyright process, but there is this royalty issue which you have to keep in mind.
Here is the last question of the session. Is there any shortcut available to learn digital humanity?
No, I cannot hear you at all. Your voice is breaking.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yes, now you are audible.
Is there any short-term courses available to learn digital humanities in detail?
Nothing that I know
asked
of.
by the participant.
Nothing that I know of. I'm sorry, I don't think there are any courses, But there are books available in plenty. The sources that I had cited earlier, they are also available. You can actually download those books and read. But however, I saw just one question here. How can you relate it to gender and language, especially in literature? Had you noticed, I skipped one slide towards the end because we didn't have much time. Gender is also an important parameter. In the beginning, I told you how digital literary studies is apolitical. But no, we can analyze gender and we can come to a conclusion that this DH or digital literary studies is not apolitical. It has all sorts of political connection. That book, Distant Horizons by Ted Underwood, there in a particular chapter, he starts to analyze novels, okay, written during the 20th century, and the findings of the novels. It's very interesting. I wrote them all down and kept. See, by reading all those novels, just give me 2 minutes time. So usually in a novel, we tend to think that it is the women who are always reading, but the men do not indulge in reading. But it's not the case. By analyzing the novels written in the early 19th, 20th century, we understand that both men and women undertake reading, it seems. And then women are always, their emotions are explained in detail. Women feel their emotions, it seems. All the novelists, whether it is men or women, who's the author of the novel, it is immaterial. You have heart, tears, sighs, smiles, all these words are associated with women's emotion when women's emotions are being discussed. And then very strangely, when they are referring to women, it seems women smile and laugh. That is the term used. But when it comes to men grin and chuckle, it seems. And men, whenever they talk about a man, immediately they say there is a reference to the pocket that he has, and he is always putting something or taking something out of his pocket, it seems. So this reference, it is found in lots and lots of novels. And one significant finding, that is until 1970, for a period of say 20-30 years, it seems women's contribution to writing had been very less, it seems. Fine, women writers, their contribution was less, and men or women writing about women were very less at that point of time. Only a few pages were allotted to women, it seems. Most, that is, women were underrepresented. And even when women writers wrote a novel, they wrote about what? Equally about men and women. They did not give privilege to women, it seems. So these are some of the findings connected to gender. Do you understand? By analyzing the novels of the 20th century. So gender also can be analyzed. Fine.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your patience in answering all the questions raised by the participants. Now I invite Ms. Agashana to propose the vote of thanks.
Living in a state of gratitude is the gateway to grace. I am greatly privileged to propose my gratitude to our today's speaker, Dr. Madangi, for her erudite talk on digital literary studies and challenges faced, and most importantly, the ethics to be followed in digital humanities. We also came to know the tedious work that lies behind the algorithm. Thank you, ma'am, for the most informative session on the topic, which enlightened us with a digital perspective of teaching literature and language. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.
Someone has
Thank you.
asked me a question. I have tried to give an answer in the link. My best wishes to each and every one of you. So hope you learn more about digital humanities and everything associated with this topic and the other topic in literature, language, and theory. And hope we are all able to use it effectively in our classrooms. My blessings and best wishes go with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. You have given us a new avenue, new avenues in teaching literature through digital.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Okay,
Mohani Sundari,
okay.
ma'am. Very kind of you. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Bye.